Hello, hello. Hey, girl. Hey. Just trying to get this set up. Hold on. Okay. Got everything on. Hello, hello, everybody. Hey. Okay. Uh-oh. Let me see. Jamie, I see you. I'm trying to add you now. I don't see. Uh-oh. Let me see. Are you on your phone, Jamie? Because I don't see an option to add you to the live. Let's see. Hello, hello, everybody. Hey, we're going to get started in just a second. Trying to figure out. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'm adding you now. It should have something to say. There we go.
Hi, ma'am. Hi, sister.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Doing well. So usually I would start with music and be jamming and all that, but Facebook won't let me be great. So last week they muted the part with the music on it. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to go through this today. I'm just going to not even worry about it. So we'll just say hello to everybody. Welcome everybody as they come on in. So we'll get started in just a second. Hello, hello, everybody. Come on in. I am so excited about tonight. Yes, this is going to be a good conversation. And Neff said, hey, cousin, can you see the comments?
Hey, Neff.
Oh, okay, getting set up here. All right, so it's 8:01. We're just gonna go ahead and get started. So I'll start with the preliminaries first to get those out of the way so that we can just go ahead with the conversation. So first of all, for those who don't know who I am, hello, everybody. I am Siobhan Carter, the You Relationship Coach, and that means I am passionate about all things relationships. So especially the relationship with yourself. So I love to talk about different things dealing with relationships. And just have different people on. Sometimes I have guests, sometimes I don't, but I just love to talk about different aspects of relationships to encourage people and just to sprinkle a little hope, on your Facebook page. So, there's so much negativity, a lot of stuff going on in our timeline, on Facebook timeline. So this relationship conversations happens every Wednesday at 8:00, and it's just to encourage you, to let you know that you're not alone, to let you hear about real life scenarios of people just like you and I who are going through but who have overcome. So I am so grateful to have my sister on with me tonight, Miss Jamie Smith. So Jamie, share with the people, tell them about who you are.
I am Jamie Smith. I'm from a little town called Allacupa up here in Pennsylvania. I am blessed to be the wife of Terry Smith. I have two natural born sons. They're grown and they have their own families. And then I've been blessed with to be the bonus mom with 3 daughters and another son. And we got a whole cattle full of grandchildren. I'm a senior audit manager for one of the large insurance companies here in Pittsburgh. And I am a newly ordained elder at our church.
Nice. I know that's right.
Amen.
That is wonderful. Letting God have his way. Yes, indeed. So before we get into the conversation, I wanted to take a pause just to share a little bit about 2 things that for those who are tuning in and watching, I wanted to share these 2 things with you. Because like I said earlier, as far as just in being passionate about relationships, one of the things that I did last year was publish my second book, Dear Miss Wholeness. And as we're talking about relationships, this is a story about my relationship journey of going from divorce to just being single again, and that whole process and what that was like. So, and I get real about my journey and about my story. So I just wanted to share this with you all, and you can go to ShavonCarter.com and find out more about that book. And then also, another book I'm proud of is Real Women on the Journey, A Traveler's Guide for Everyday Life. And this book is one that I published through my publishing company. And it's a story of 7 women who are going through some real life experiences. And we get real about our journeys. So it's just to let you know that you're not alone. Okay, so, and you can get this book on Amazon. Both of them are available on Amazon, and I'll put a link in there later. So just wanted to get that out of the way as well, so that we can get into a powerful story that my sister Jamie has to offer. So as we're talking about powerful stories, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, Jamie, is because you have a powerful story about something that happened as you experienced loss, but there was blessing that came out of it at the same time. So if you could start just telling us about our story, because about your story, when I first reached out to you, I was just talking to you about, the experience of losing your mother, and it turned into just this beautiful story. So can you give us just a summary, and we're going to dig in deeper, but just give an overview of what you've gone through.
Okay, so when you called me the other day, we were talking, and it's hard to get to where I am without knowing where I've been. Amen.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so, leading up to my mother's death, maybe a couple months prior to, um, I was living my best life. I had just gotten out of a mentally and physically abusive relationship. Um, After coming out of that, I've decided, I'm gonna live my best life. I finished school. I graduated at the top of my class, double major, double minor. I was in the best shape of my life. I was running 3 times a day, just getting in shape.
Yes.
Had gotten promoted on my job, was making more money than I ever could imagine. And
Wow.
I felt I was living my best life. But in that, and I'm gonna be totally transparent with you today, I had gotten to the point because of all the hurt during the relationships. I've
Mm-hmm.
decided that I didn't want any titles in relationships. I had
Mm-hmm.
a couple of empty relationships that didn't require me to have any kind of commitment. They
Mm.
were dead end relationships that I knew weren't going to go anywhere. And that was okay with me because that fit in with what I was doing. It compromised me in the ministry, but at that time, I was living my best life because I had been hurt. And
Mm.
one day, this dude who I went to high school with and never even paid him any attention in high school, even though he was a star athlete and I was a pom pom girl. He was older than me, but now that we talk about it, I never even had a conversation with him when we were in high school. It was like
Wow.
not we like, hey, what's up? But we never really talk to each other. And one
Mm-hmm.
day he hit me on my inbox on Facebook and was like, "Hey, nice picture." And I'm like, "I don't do inboxes. Don't be hitting me up on my face. No, I don't do that." And so he was like, "Well, can what did I say? Did I say something wrong? Can I come to can we go for coffee?" And I'm like, "I don't drink coffee." And so he came down to my job, and I didn't even tell him this is where I worked at. I just said, "You can meet me at Starbucks," but it was my building.
Yeah.
And he came to meet me and we talked, and I'm like, "Oh, all right. And he was like, all like he was said hello, but he kissed me. And I went back upstairs and I told my girl, I was like, "Oh no, he's a personal space invader." And I was like, "I can't do this. I can't do this." So then I
Not the
told her,
personal space invader, Jamie.
he,
Wait.
he was invading my space. I like, you, how you gonna kiss me and I don't even know you like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he called, and so we ended up going out on a date and everything. But one of the things I was telling you, that he didn't fit my type. We
Mm-hmm.
went out to dinner, and I had safe dates at that time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so we went out to dinner with the family, and this is when my sons met him. And about that time, my son was maybe about 22, and my son is a lean built guy. And so
Mhm.
he was like, it's about time you gave the skinny brothers a chance, because my type was always the muscle bound type. They had a whole different swag, because growing up, I was bad. So I liked the
Yeah.
bad boys when I was growing up,
Yeah.
and he didn't fit any of those molds. So he was
Wow.
not my type. He's 6'7", he's thin, he's not muscle bound. He was
Mhm.
has a master's degree in education, so he had that educational swag to him. He had a bad
Mhm.
boy swag to him. So I kept saying, I don't think I really
Yeah.
like him, because he's not my type. And
Mhm.
so it began to evolve into a
Yeah.
relationship. But what I found was happening is I missed the empty, no title commitment relationships, even while I was with him. And I had
Wow.
told him that if the relationship was going to work, we had to be totally honest with each other. And I
Mhm.
think the turning point in our relationship is maybe 6 months into the relationship. He came down, and I was missing those empty spaces.
Mhm.
And he was like, "What's up with you today?" He's like, "You seem distant." And I was like, "Nothing." He's like, "No, it's something wrong."
Mhm.
And I said, "Okay, if we're going to be honest with each other," I said, "I, I miss him." And
Mm.
he knew who him was. and
Mhm.
and and at this point, he's 6'7", so I'm like, I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to fight this dude today. and
Woo.
and so he took a minute, and I said, "Oh, this is over at this point."
Mhm.
And his response, I think instantly at that moment, I fell in love with him, because he said, "If you're missing something or someone while I'm right here, it's not you, it's me."
Mm.
He said,
Mm.
I must be doing something wrong, because if I'm allowing you to miss someone, if it's enough space in there for you to miss someone, it's me, it's not you." And
Mm.
just
Mm.
that response at that moment began to soften my heart toward him. And
Mm.
at the end of that year, he said, "Well, I'm going to take you away on vacation." And
Wait, hold on. You mind if we pause right here? Because this is some good stuff, and I don't want to miss it.
okay.
I don't want to miss it. We gonna go on with the story, y'all. We got to pause right here to just interject some. This is some good stuff. So one of the things that you said was, one, he wasn't your type. Like, you were used to a certain type. So here comes someone in a different package. What did you have to do, I guess, mentally, emotionally, to I guess, be open to still dating him, even though he didn't come in the package that you wanted, or that you were used to, shall I say?
So Terry came into my life at a point where I had decided I was tired of those type of relationships,
Okay.
the empty relationships.
Mhm.
My friend Lena, we had talked one day, and I was like, I'm putting parental controls on my phone, so they can't call me, I can't call them. And I was like, where I think they might be, I'm not going. And
Mhm.
so, and then on a spiritual, I had said, "God, don't bring me anybody. I
Mm.
need to get whole by myself." I
Yeah.
said, "Don't bring me anybody again." I got ahead of God in my last relationship, and
Mhm.
God will allow things to happen.
Yeah.
If that's what you want, God gonna let you get it, but it might not be
Right.
what He has for you. And so
Right.
after I was broken, like broken down, I
Mm.
decided. I said, "God, anything that's not of you, or that
Yeah.
you don't want from me, don't let it come nigh me." And so when Terry
Mhm.
came into my life, and the way that he came into my life, I was like, "Oh, okay." And so
Mhm.
just it was things that was different about him that
Wow.
turned him into my type. I've
Wow.
never had a man that prayed with me. I've never
Mm.
had a man that was interested in going to church with me, that didn't
Mhm.
have an MO. It was, and he was going, like, he'd come down to go on a date, and I'm like, "I'm going to Bible study." And he'd be like,
Mhm.
"Okay, we going to Bible study then." And so that kind of stuff started like turning me on. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm like, this,
Yeah.
okay. And so my type, and a lot of we'll get into it more when we talk about my mother's death.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
began to learn that what was my type wasn't what God had for me. It wasn't God's
Wow.
type for me. And I never
Wow.
was open to somebody like Terry, because when we first
Mhm.
started dating, again, like I said, I felt like I was living my best life.
Yeah.
And when Terry came to me, he was at a pivotal point in his life
Mhm.
where He was working as an adjunct professor.
Mm-hmm.
He was only part-time. He didn't have money. I was used to brothers having money that went out with
Yeah.
me. I had my own,
Mm-hmm.
but they needed to have theirs too. And
Yeah.
and he was living in an apartment. Sometimes he wasn't able. And for everybody that's watching, he told me it's okay to share this. Um, sometimes he wasn't able to meet his bills, even to come see me. Sometimes, like
Mm-hmm.
I would have to give him gas money to come see me, and that I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, wait, there's something wrong with this. And so that's
Yeah.
how he began to beat my type, because he was
Mm-hmm.
so much out of the normal of what I was used to. And my children had a lot
Mm-hmm.
to do with it. My sons they fell in love with him before I
Mm-hmm.
actually fell in love with him. And they began to tell me, Ma, your type is not what you need. This is what you need.
Wow. Wow. And let me ask you this question, because we're in a day age where, the list is important and man has to have this and he has to have, this money and this type of status and that kind of stuff. So to hear you say that there are times when he didn't have money, when you had to give him gas money, his bills, he was still paying on his bills, and, maybe wasn't up to date and current and everything. What would you say to a woman who is maybe in that type of situation, but wrestling, maybe, feeling like this is someone who is a blessing to her, but is wrestling with the thoughts about what people say, what society say, who she's supposed to be with? What would you say to her?
If you want something different than what you're used to having, you got to do something different. And
Mm,
so when he came to me in this state, instead of pushing him away, I prayed about it. And I
yeah.
said, okay, God, I'm going to change everything that I ever thought of. I see Never said I had to reset. Amen.
Yes,
I had to say
absolutely.
everything that I thought I wanted, and
Mm-hmm.
everything that I considered acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
I had to get away with that and say, okay, God, I'm going to open my heart to this. And if this is what
Mm-hmm.
you are sending me, if I truly believe this is what you're sending me, then I have to do something different this time.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so then I
yeah.
began to soften and then the way he loved me, because I mean,
Mm,
it was maybe a month into the relationship and we were on
mm-hmm.
the phone and he was like, I love you before we got off the phone. And I was like, well, I act like I ain't hear him.
I
I was
didn't know
like,
you didn't
whoa,
say
whoa,
that
whoa,
now.
whoa, whoa, this, you gotta be kidding me. But the way that he loved me,
Yeah.
um,
Mm-hmm.
made me change my requirements. Amen. It opened
Wow.
my heart up to a whole different type of thing. So to a woman who wants something different, sometimes you got
Mm-hmm.
to open your heart up to something different, a change that you've never did before. He might not be built the way you want. His bank account might not look the way you want to. He might not have
Mm-hmm.
everything that he want. But if you truly
Mm-hmm.
believe that that's who God has put in your life, you have to trust and believe God and open your heart.
Come on now. Okay, so let's get back to the story now. The night that the day that you said, that you were telling him and being honest and transparent with him about missing someone from your past, and he said to you, now in that moment, it could have went a whole nother way, a whole lot of different
Yeah,
ways.
could have.
He could have really gotten in his feelings and be like, "What you okay? Well, go back to him then." You just so much could have happened. But what he said to you, can you repeat that again? What he said to you when you told him how you were really feeling about someone else?
Well, I didn't. He took a moment, so I don't know if he was
Okay.
thinking about strangling me or if he was praying. But
Okay.
but now I know that maybe he was praying, because when
Yeah.
Terry told me that before he even asked to date me, he had a
Mm-hmm.
moment where he had talked to God and told him his conversation with God. He said, God, make me who you need me to be. And
Wow.
so at that time, I want to believe that he was praying. And even
Mm-hmm.
after I said, I miss him,
Mm-hmm.
it took about maybe 2, 3 minutes. And he looked up and he said, if you're missing him, it's not you, it's me. He
What
said,
you
because
say?
if I'm not loving you, if I'm not filling all those spaces and I'm
Mm.
allowing you to time to miss somebody, I'm doing something wrong, not you.
Ooh, wait
I ain't
a
gonna,
minute. You
I
better
ain't gonna tell
go
you
ahead.
what I was like. Oh, like
Because what do you say to that? Because maybe in your mind in that moment, what were you expecting? Like, where did you think it was going to go after you shared
I
that?
expected exactly what you said. I expected him to say, "Well, you know what? You call him," because that's what I
Mm-hmm.
was used to. He
Yeah.
he's not the first person that I just said I don't want to be with you no more. And they were like,
Mm-hmm.
cool, deuces bye, and they left, and we ain't messing around no more. But
Yeah.
I really thought, and he's such a good guy. I
Yeah.
said, okay, I'm going to say this to him, and I'm gonna hurt him, and he ain't
Mm.
gonna want to mess with me no more.
Mm.
There was times that I had told him, I was like, you don't want to mess with me. I told him that so many times in like that 6 months. I'm like, you don't want to
Mm-hmm.
mess with me. I said, I'm broken. I'm
Mm-hmm.
damaged. I'm like, you don't want to mess with me. And he kept
Mm-hmm.
on saying, no, no, I'm sure, I'm sure. So I
Mm-hmm.
thought that when I said that, if his reaction
Yeah.
was like, fine, bye, I'm out, then it would have
Yeah.
just been over and I would have been cool with that. But that
Was
wasn't the
that a
reaction
way?
I got.
Would you say that that was a way internally that you may have been trying to sabotage the relationship?
I would definitely say that.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
like I said, that was the reaction. When I was done, and I would say
Yeah.
what I felt like saying because I don't have a filter sometimes. And so
Yeah.
if they left, it was cool with me. Bye. And but then he was, and one thing he said, Jamie, if you allow me to get these size 15 shoes into your life, I ain't never going nowhere.
Come
So I was
on,
like, oh
size
my,
15.
I know. Yeah, give me high five. There you go. No.
Go ahead. Wow. Wow. So even when you were trying to put your track shoes on and run, God had something else in mind for you. Wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow. That took a whole lot of humility and maturity and the spirit of God in him to say that and to mean it and to see beyond what you were saying to speak to your heart. You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
took God was definitely working through him. So I'm glad that he took a moment to pause and really process before he spoke. So he responded instead of reacting, and it made a world of difference. So what happened after that?
So
After that?
it was a series, literally,
Mm-hmm.
maybe weeks after all of this. And I can, if I can pinpoint at the moment, one of the moments, when I knew that he was him for me,
Yeah.
that was the moment. That was one of them. After
Mm-hmm.
that, my sister, my oldest sister, who at the time was only about 55, she had a massive stroke,
Mm.
total devastating. We had to place her in a nursing home. About two
Wow.
weeks after that, his stepbrother, his only sibling, had a massive heart attack and died. And
Mm.
so it turned out, so we began to just really lean on each other because we were both in really, really hard times in our life. So at the end of
Mm-hmm.
that year, he said, Jamie, let me take you away. Let's
Mm.
go away. And this was in
Mm-hmm.
December of that year. And I was like, I don't know if I like you like that. And so then he was like, well, let's go. I'm going to take you to Disney. He says, one of my favorite places. He says, so we're going to go to Disney. And I was like, well, for how long? And he said, a week. And I said, ooh. I said, I don't know if I want to be somewhere with you for a week. Because at this time, again, a part of the things that I was doing different is there was no sex.
Mm-hmm.
There was no spending the night. He had to go home. It was the
Mm.
middle of a snowstorm one day. I said, you gotta go home. My son said, you
Yeah.
wrong for that, Mom. You wrong for that. But at that point, so I'm like, we going to Disney for a week. I don't know if I like you like that. And I said, I don't know if you gonna like me like that for a week. We might get
Right.
down there and don't like each other. I need to come
Mm.
home. So he
Right.
said, just trust me. So we went away to Disney, and this was in December, and
Mm-hmm.
had the best time. He planned
Mm.
everything out like from start to finish, and I could feel myself beginning to fall in love with him at that point.
Wow. Wow.
However, on this trip, while we were gone, my mother, who was in perfectly fine health,
Mm-hmm.
she called me and she was like, when are you coming home? And she called me like every single day that I was there. And she kept saying, when are you coming home? And I was like, I'm a couple more days, Mom, I'll be home. And the day before I came home, she said, Jamie, when are you coming home? And I said, Mama, be home tomorrow. And I said, what's wrong? And she said, I don't
Yeah.
feel, something don't feel right. And at that time,
Mm.
she said it was her heart. She said, like, I feel like I'm having a panic attack. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
Mom, probably because I've been away, because me and my mother were very, very, very close.
Okay.
She very close to all her daughters, and I'm the baby. And
Mhm.
I said, Mom, I'm gonna be home tomorrow. She said, I need to go pay my bills. And I said, okay, I'm gonna be home tomorrow. And whatever we gotta do, when I get home, we'll take care of it. And she was like, yeah, maybe I'm just having some anxiety while you were gone. And
Mm.
so, if you allow me, I'll go into the story with God's help. We
Mhm.
get back, and everybody thought that while we were gone, Terry, his friends thought he was going to propose while we were gone, because at this point, it had been about a year since we
Okay.
had been dating. And when we
Mhm.
got back, I had a surprise party for him for his
Mhm.
birthday here at my home. And we invited all his boys. I told all his boys to come down, and they were all here, and my family was here. And
Mhm.
they were like, did you guys get engaged while y'all were gone? And we were like, no, we didn't get engaged. We didn't get engaged. And so that night, a couple of my friends were getting ready to leave. And he was like, wait before everybody leave, wait before everybody leave. And so he gets down on one knee and he
Wow.
pulls out this ring. And my niece Marissa is watching. This part is her part right here. And he, says, Jamie, will you marry me? And
Yeah.
I had him down there for about a good 7 minutes.
7 minutes.
Just
You know how
staring
long that
at him
seven
like, what
minutes?
are you doing? And so I'm like, oh dear God, why are you doing this? And so I said, and my niece came behind me and she was like, Aunt Jamie, you gotta say something. And so I was like, it's gonna be a really long engagement, everybody. And so I'm like, Terry, get up, like get up. And he
Yeah.
had this custom made ring made, and
Wow.
he gave me the ring, and we get engaged. And I'm like, oh dear God. So the next day we had a brunch. And my mother came up for the brunch, and we invited
Mhm.
everybody back to the house. But before everybody got there, um, my mom said, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" And
Mm.
please, your viewing audience, please forgive me, because this is a really hard. This was the turning point of my life. And
Yeah.
so she said, "I need to talk to you for a minute." And I'm like, "Okay." So me and her sat down, and so she said, "Why'd you embarrass that man like that last night in
Mm.
front of all his
Mm.
friends?" And I said,
Wow.
"Ma, I didn't do anything embarrassing." I said, "What did I do?" And she said, "You were like, it's gonna be a long engagement." And I was like, "Well,
Mm.
Ma, it is." I said, "Because I don't want to get married anymore." I said, I'm done with that. I don't want that." I said, "So it's gonna be a while." And so I
Mhm.
said, then Ma, I said, "You know what?" I said, "Even though we've been away, I still don't know if he my type." And so
Mm.
she was like, "Okay." And I said, and she said, "Well, Jay, I need to ask you something." And I said, "Yeah." She said, "What's your type, Jay?"
Mm.
And she said, "Is
Mm.
it the type that knock you upside your head? Is that your type, Jay, or is it the
Wow.
kind that leave you? Which one is your type?" She said, "Because
Wow.
from talking to him, I could tell he's a good man. I could tell he was raised right." And she was
Mm.
like, "So, well, tell me what's your type? What
Wow.
you looking for?" And at that
Wow.
point, and if for any of our Caucasian viewing audience, please forgive me, because my mother was crazy. But she was like, "So then with a white girl getting, then you gonna be sitting there talking about, oh, that's what kind he wanted, anyway." So
Mhm.
and it planted a seed in my mind, And she said, you better
Mm.
think. One of my sister Tony always said, "You think long, you think wrong." So my
Yeah.
mother was like, don't take too long. She was like, "You better
Mhm.
think about this." And so I was like, "All
Mhm.
right, Ma, all right." And as God would have it, a few days after that, we had went to church that morning. My mom cooked dinner every Sunday for us.
Mhm.
Her home is maybe five houses, six houses away from our former church. And
Mhm.
we had dinner. Me and my sisters went down and we had dinner with my mom. We had a great day. Terry was there. I sang in the choir that day. Terry,
Mhm.
she was elbowing Terry, talk about, "You hear my baby singing." And it was just an all around good day. And I come home, and
Mm.
I came home, and I said, Terry said, "Well," I said, "I'm getting ready to get a shower. You got to go home." Because again, we still
Mhm.
weren't at that point. And he said, "Well, I'm
Right.
just going to wait till you get out the shower and then I'll leave." And I'm like, "Okay." So when I get out, my sister Tony called me and she was like, "Mom and this was literally a week after my mother and I had the conversation. So
Wow.
I
Wow.
thank and I praise God that He allowed us that time, because
Yeah.
my sister Tony called me and she said, she said, "Did Mom call you?" And I was like, "No." And she said, "Well, she just called me." She said she had a headache. And
Mhm.
so I said, "Well, did she take something?" And Tony said, "That's the same thing I asked her." And so then I said, "Okay, I'm on my way." I threw on some raggedy sweatpants, and I'll never forget the outfits, some raggedy sweatpants and some rubber boots because it was January, and a sweatshirt. And so Terry said, well, let me take you. I'm going to take you up to your mom's house. And so we get up there, and my sister and my youngest son are on the porch. And the whole time I'm calling my mother and her phone is busy. So I'm like, she talking to somebody. And I get up there and I'm like, what are y'all doing on the porch? And they said, she's not answering the door. And my son had climbed up on the roof to try to get in. He couldn't get in. And so me being me, I'm like, well, we got to get in. So I had just gotten her a brand new door. And I took a brick and I busted the door because we couldn't get in. And as God would have it, Terry said, let me go in first. He said, y'all let me go in first. And he went in first. And a lot of this is from stuff that my sister and he told me. He went in and my mother was laying on the floor in her bedroom. And she had, at that time, I thought it was just a stroke. And this was the time when I fell in love with Terry because God allowed me to be in a vulnerable state. I have a big personality. And at that time, I was at my most vulnerable point. He went in and my mother was laying on the floor and he went and put her in his arms and he reassured her that me and my sister were there and that everything was going to be okay. And I went into emergency mode. And she was like, oh my goodness, I'm using the bathroom on myself. And he just kept holding her in his arms. And God allowed me to see him holding my mother and assuring her that that everything was going to be okay. And I went outside and I called 911 and he continued to hold her even after the paramedics got there. And my sister rode in the ambulance. My mother didn't talk and she never opened her eyes after that point. And Terry said, well, let me drive you to the hospital. And him and I got into my car and we went to the hospital. And on the way to the hospital, I'm an organizer. So I'm like, okay, she's had a stroke. She's going to come live with me. You know, I'm going to get the downstairs retrofitted. She's going to be fine. And we get to the hospital and the doctors had told us that she had a total and massive and destructive aneurysm. Her brainstem had blown, and her brain had begun to come down her spinal cord, and there was no hope for survival. In my 33 years of working in insurance, I just couldn't grasp what they were saying. Everything that I learned in school, I have a minor in theology, that all went out the window. I none of it. My sister is an RN. Thanks be to God that they were able to talk to her, because I laugh about it now, and I say, you know, they probably thought I had went crazy for a minute because I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, and I'm like, I work for one of the best insurance companies in the city of Pittsburgh. We're going to get her life flighted out of here, and but as God would have it, my mother had a living will that only my son knew about, and she had left him instructions that if anything had ever happened to her, that he knew where it was and where the key was. And at that point the power went from my hands to my mother's, because she had a living will that said don't do any life-saving measures. So at that point my sister Tony took over and we decided that we were going to let my mother go that night. And when we were in Florida, if you recall, she said she thought it was her heart. And so I was getting back because I made sure she went to all her doctor's appointments. I made sure she got her prescriptions filled. That was my job, to make sure she was okay. And the wonderful thing about it is that even in her sickness, even in that condition she was in, we put her on pain medication to make sure that she was comfortable. But God allowed us 7 days to come to terms with it. The enemy would have liked to take her life that night in the house
Yeah.
by herself and let her die
Mm-hmm.
alone, and
Right.
for my son or for my sister to find her the next day.
Mm.
But as God would have it, He allowed us 7 additional days
Wow.
after we found her on the floor.
Mm.
And she was only on pain medication. She wasn't on any kind of life support. And even
Mm.
though her brain had stopped, her
Mm-hmm.
heart continued to beat for 7 days.
Wow.
And for
Wow.
those that know the word of God, seven is God's number of complete. And so
Mm-hmm.
God allowed us 7 days of completion to come to terms with what He was about to do. And
Mm-hmm.
the picture, getting back to Terry, the picture of him on the floor holding my mother, guiding me and my sister and my children through that day and through those 7 days. He had just gotten offered a new job, and he
Mm-hmm.
called and told him, he said, I can't start yet because I can't leave her. And he stuck by my side for the entire 7 days. He never left me and my sister, never went home. We didn't change clothes, and he didn't change clothes for 7 days.
Wow.
They transferred my mother from Twickley Valley Hospital to hospice in Beaver. He went
Mm-hmm.
with us. I rode in the
Mm-hmm.
ambulance. He drove my sister and them just to make sure. And he loved on me
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
hard
Yeah.
during that
Yeah.
time that I am forever
Yeah.
indebted to him for the
Yeah.
way he stood by our family during that time. And during that time, God allowed me to know, I lost my father when I was 25. And he told me at the time, I got a chance to talk to my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "You're going to be okay." He knew
Mm-hmm.
he was going to die. He said, You're going to be okay when I die." He said, "Because
Mm-hmm.
you're still going to have your mother." He said, "But
Mm-hmm.
I need to know that you're going to be okay if your mother ever leave. You need the right person in your life, Jay." He said, "Because you carry a lot." And he said, "But when your mom leave, you're going to need somebody," because he knew
Mm-hmm.
how the relationship was between my mother and I. And
Yeah.
so it began to come into fruition. My dad's words in that 7 days began to come back, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking at the man who my dad had already told me, who God had already allowed to give a prophetic word into my life, to say that
Mm-hmm.
when my mother was going to die, the person that I was going to need to have in my life had to be somebody that was going to be strong enough to carry the
Yeah.
person that always wore the cape. Because at
Wow.
that time, the cape came off and I
Yeah.
was naked and I needed
Yeah.
somebody to cover me. And so
Yeah.
everything that I thought was my type, because now that I think back to all
Mm-hmm.
the ones that I thought was my type at that time, they could
Mm-hmm.
not have carried the cape at that time. They could not have
Mm.
covered me and my family the way that Terry covered us, and the way that he loved
Mm.
on me and allowed even past relationships to come and see me at that time and to
Yeah.
pour into me. And he still stood guard over us, allowing
Mm-hmm.
all of this to go on. But then when everybody left, he was the one saying, "Baby, I got you. And we
Mm.
gonna get through this together."
Yeah.
Because we knew that inevitably my mother was going to die.
Yeah. And you know what, Jamie, what this points to, and I truly appreciate you for sharing your story and just your transparency and sharing your heart with us. And what I'm hearing in your story is it's so much bigger than us. You know, we get so bogged down in our minds and over analyzing people, and we never know the blessing that God is sending for a purpose, for so many purposes. Like if you would have, you know, rejected this man, then it's like this gift that he was giving you, you wouldn't have had, you know what I mean? And like you said, you would have had to have the cape on, and just not having that support. But it's like God is so faithful, and that he provides what we need. And it's like I'm just so grateful that the spirit was in you, just allowing you, or just talking to you and just coaching you through it, and just telling you, just look at him, and just he was sending people to just, you know, get
Yes.
your attention. It's like God knows how to get our attention. So if you're watching this and you have been wrestling and just almost feeling like you're about to sabotage a situation, or rejecting someone because they don't look like how you think they should look, I encourage you to take a lesson from Jamie's story, because this was bigger than Jamie. This was God providing what she needed in a time that she would have needed it most. So I am so grateful to God for what he did for you through Terry. And thank God for Terry and
Yes.
just the man, you know, that he was and is in your life. So, whoo, okay.
Yeah, so after that, I became a totally different person at that point. Again, we had only been engaged for a week. I told him, I said, Terry, I'm going to need you to be patient with me at this point. I don't
Yeah.
even know who I am now, because I was already broken. And now those shattered pieces now were broken even further down. I felt so lost. Again, I told him, I said, if you want to break up with me, walk away now, because I really don't want to hurt you. I said, you're too good of a man for what I'm going through right now. And he still insisted, no, I'm not. And I said, well, we could just take a break. And he said, I can't tell my heart to take a break from you. And I said, well, we can't get married right now. I said, because I did not want to jump into anything just
Yeah.
on emotion. So I said, I'm going to need some time, and I'm going to need you to be patient. And I said, and in the midst of it, I asked him, I said, Terry, please guard your heart, because Siobhan, at that point, we had talked about this before, I was angry.
Yeah.
Here I am, licensed at that time as a licensed minister. I'm a grief minister at that. Praying for people, going to the hospital, seeing other people's families healed. And here I am, couldn't get a prayer through for my mother. And that's what this is me thinking, not God's
Yeah.
talking, but me. I
Right.
can't even help my mother. And how am I going to help anybody else? And
Yeah.
so at that point in my life, I was without a pastor at my church. I was kind of leading the services and doing the officiating. And one Sunday I got up in the pulpit and I just didn't have anything left. I didn't have anything to give them.
Wow.
And I came home and I was thinking about it, and I said, I was at a pivotal point in my life. And I said, I'm either going to bust hell wide open and I'm going to go
Yeah.
back to being the old Jay,
Mm-hmm.
and Terry was going to get hurt in the midst of it, or
Mm-hmm.
I needed to find somewhere where I can be poured into, where I can get some word, where I can be filled back up again, because I
Mm-hmm.
was straddling the fence at that point, and the world was starting to outweigh my spirituality, because I was giving up on everything that I believed in at that point, because my world was just turned completely upside down. And
Yeah.
so I ended up starting to go. This is my former church that I went to was my family church. I grew up there. I had
Mm-hmm.
strong relationships there with the people there. I considered them my family. But if I would have stayed there, I would have died,
Mm-hmm.
because I was putting on a mask for everybody. I
Mm-hmm.
had the mommy mask. I had the sister mask. I had the church mask. I had the minister Jamie mask.
Yeah.
But on the inside, I was dying and I was empty. And so I began to go to another little church. They were just starting up. I started going to the Bible studies. My girlfriend Lena, I had told my pastor I needed to sit down. When I started going to the church, he knew that I was the choir director. He knew I was this. He knew I was that. And I asked him, I said, can you please just allow me some time to heal? I don't
Yeah.
want to do anything here. I don't want to direct. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to dance. I don't want to do dance ministry. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to be a minister. I just need to be Jay for a
Mm-hmm.
minute. And so he said, I'm going to allow you your space. I won't ask you to do anything. And
Yeah.
my girlfriend Lynn, I kept saying I retired. I always say I retire. And she said, you can't retire from God. And I said, I retired. And she was like, no, you can't retire. And
Yeah.
in the midst of my retirement, God still was showing me, because at this point I'm feeling unworthy. I'm broken. I feel like I don't have anything.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend Lena, experienced a great loss. Her 3-month-old grandchild passed away in his sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I had to draw off of everything that I knew in me, because here I sat down on God. I was like, I'm about to turn my back on God. And in
Mm-hmm.
that, in her loss, I found who I was. So I think and I
Right.
praise God for her,
Yeah.
because it caused me to know that God still had a use for me, and that
Mm.
there was a word that God had for me for her. And
Yeah.
so I began, she said, I'm going to need you. And I said, no, I'm on a sabbatical. It's just saying, I was always saying, I'm off sabbatical. And God said, no, I need you to work. And during her grandbaby's funeral, I stood with her. I helped her get the program together. I never left her side. When I didn't even think I had a word, God was allowing me to pour into her. And it was then that I began to come alive again. And Terry was
Mm-hmm.
here again, standing
Mm-hmm.
beside us, doing whatever I needed him to do,
Mm-hmm.
checking on her. And she became his sister, and
Mm.
he was loving on her and loving us through it. So again, through loss
Yeah.
became my gain. Amen.
Wow.
And
Wow.
through her loss, I began to find my strength again, and I began to get into the word again, because I
Right.
had to get into the word to give her word and to help her get
Right.
through. And so
Right.
that is when my spiritual life began to change again, through a bad and horrible loss.
And you know what I hear in this too, the word that keeps coming to me is love. When so many times you wanted to give up and just, let go of Terry, when you wanted to turn your back on God, he showered so much love through people and through his word that he would not let you go. You know what I mean? Like, love is such a healing force. God's love, we can't outrun it. We can say we're not worthy. We can say I'm broken and I don't deserve, but his showering you with love through people and through his spirit was so profound in your story. As I'm listening, it's like he would not let you go. He would not let you go back to who you were. He wouldn't let you go back to what you were used to. He wouldn't let you let go of what was good for you. Like, you were going to get the point that God loved you. You know what I mean? Like, he was pursuing you like no other, and he used people and things to do it. So I am so grateful that through his pursuit of you, through his love, that it unlocked, who Jamie is and the purposes and the plans that he had for your life. So I'm just, yeah, yeah. So it's for those who are watching, and if you are feeling unlovable, if you're feeling broken, if you're feeling like you don't deserve because of what you've done, because of what you've gone through, once again, I just want you to take a lesson from Jamie's story and just see that God isn't worried about all of that stuff. He sees you. He knows who you created, who he created you to be, and he still has purpose for you, and he still has people that he's assigned to you that he wants you to connect with. So I'm just so grateful of what he's done in your life and who he's used to show you that he's God.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Mm-mm.
Amen.
Mm-mm.
So, to finish up our story, about
Mm-hmm.
6 months after that, we at this point, I'm totally in love with this man. Um,
Yeah.
it's about a year now after my mother has passed away, and
Mm.
one of my girlfriends had given me a trip, and she said,
Yeah.
Jamie, I'm gonna give you this cruise to go to Belize because you've been through so much. And
Mm.
Terry at that time had just started another new job and couldn't go away, so my sister Tony came with me, and
Mm.
we went on a week-long cruise. And it was around the first anniversary of my mother's death, and
Mm.
we did a lot of soul searching while we were on that cruise. And it was just me and my sister. And when we got back, it was Terry's birthday again, because again, we're here at 1 year. So we're back to Terry's birthday. and
Mhm.
he didn't go on the cruise. So when I came home, I said, you know, baby, I'm so sorry. I said I missed your birthday, and I said you didn't get to go on the trip with us, and I apologize. And so I said, but I bought you a gift back. And so he was like, "Oh, you did?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh, what did you bring me?" And I said, I'm going to give you a wife." And so
Wow.
he was like, "You kidding?" And I was like, "No, I'm for real." And so then he said, "You want to get married?" And I was like, "Yeah, we're going to get married." And so then he was like, "You playing?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, "Okay, then let's go get the marriage license." And so he said, "If you for real," he said, "I'm going to leave work. I'm coming to get you."
No,
And then he was like, "I'm gonna strike it while it's hot." And so I was like, "Okay." So he came, we went and we got the marriage license. And so then he was I guess he said, "Okay, we got this license is only good for 90 days." So he said, "So when you want to get?" I said, "When you want to get married?" And so he said, "Valentine's Day." And I was like, "Ooh, that's in a month." I was like, "That's only a month away." But then I was like, I said, "That's so corny." I was like, "No, we're not getting married on Valentine's Day." And so then I said, what about, he said, "What about the day after then?" So I was like, "Okay, we'll get married the day after." And it was on February 15th, and it was on a
Wow.
Sunday. And we had
Mm.
told our pastor, and he knew our story. And we met with our pastor in that month, and we told our children, we said, "We're going to take you guys out to eat after we get out of church." And we had decorated the house. And my sister almost blew it, because she was like, after church, she was like, "I'm coming over y'all house after church." And I'm like, "No, just give us a minute," because I came
Right.
home and got dressed, and he had to come home and get dressed, and our pastor had to get here. And so our family came over at the time. His children came down, and my boys came with their spouses, and we had a wedding, and we surprised
Wow.
everybody. And his sister was here. From DC, his god
Wow.
sister, and we got
Mhm.
married in that year's time too. Another thing that we did, and this is the thing that helped us bond, and a way
Mhm.
that we got rid of the old, is that we remodeled my whole house. Him and I,
Wow.
we redid the hardwood floors, we painted, we
Mm.
took down wallpaper, and we made what was my house into our home. And it
Wow.
has touches of him all in it and touches of me all in it. And so our
Wow.
pastor was like, you can get married at the church." And we said, "No, we want to get married in the home that we created." And
Wow.
I love my home now. It's our place of peace. And we got married right
Mhm.
here, surrounded by our families. And
Wow.
after that, we went out to dinner, and the rest
Mm.
is history now.
Wow. This is such a beautiful story. Just so many nuggets that can be, taken away from this powerful story. So I thank you for sharing everything that you shared. And it's like, just I know it was, I know people were blessed by it, by little things that, I hope it spoke to, people's life and where they are, and just letting them know that there is hope. Even like you said, you were in bad relationships before, but look what God did for you, in
Yes.
this. And even in the midst of challenges and loss and losing your mother, who you were so close to and near and dear to your heart, you were provided with everything that you needed. And it is just such a beautiful, beautiful story.
Amen.
So, what words would you like to leave with someone who may be struggling with losing their mother or their father?
When I lost my mother, my entire world came to a complete halt. There's a young lady at our church who's an aspiring minister, and I've been in her life almost her ever since she's been a little girl, and she's a mature woman in the word now. And her name's Nicoya. And she
Mhm.
came to me one day after church, and she said, "Jamie, God gave me a word for you, and I want to share it with you, but I'm afraid." And so then I
Mm.
said, "Well, I'm a discerner, so you could tell me, but if God didn't tell me that He sent you to tell me, I'm gonna know it." And she came over my house, and we were talking in the living room, and she said, "Jamie, gave me a word for you, and he said that he didn't take your mother to hurt you. He said
Mhm.
she said that God gave her that my mother had fulfilled her purpose here, and she had did
Wow.
a job a job well done, and that in
Mhm.
order for me to elevate, he had to take her away so that
Mm.
I can find who. It was my time to start walking out my purpose and my destiny, because my mother had fulfilled hers.
Mm.
And it
Mm.
was a hard word, but in my spirit I received it, because
Yeah.
my mother gave her entire life for her girls. She was a single
Mm.
parent. She raised us by herself. We knew what it was not to have, but she stretched it. And so
Mhm.
at that point, it was my sign from God that through my mother's death, it was time for me to go higher. It was time for
Wow.
me to quit compromising. It was time for me to quit straddling the fence and
Mm.
having one foot in the world and one foot in the church, and
Mm.
always keeping that foot in the world, because that was my comfort zone. That's where, I flourished. That's where I was comfortable at. And God said, it's time for you not to be comfortable anymore. It's
Yeah.
time for you to be uncomfortable, and change and growth is painful. It's
Mhm.
uncomfortable, even in the physical body. When we
Mhm.
grow and our bones begin to grow, they hurt.
Yeah.
As women, when we begin to get boobs, it hurt when we get them. So as
Yeah.
things grow, it's
Yeah.
painful. And so God said, you're going through a very painful period in your life, because through your pain, it's time for you to grow. And so
Wow.
through my mother's death,
Mhm.
since then, one of the things you and I talked about is what where do I what am I now that my mother has left me? And the
Yeah.
life that I see myself living now is unimaginable.
Mm.
To have a man like Terry in my life, somebody
Mhm.
who wasn't again my type,
Yeah.
this educated, tall man who, was didn't, wasn't in the world that much, wasn't that thuggish, ruggish bone type dude,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
he's everything. Somebody who that I never thought was enough is
Mhm.
now. One of the things I said to him all the time is that I never needed anybody in my life, because
Mhm.
that's the personality that I had. And one of the things that I
Yeah.
used to always say is, a man, we'll say, nobody shouldn't want nobody that's needy. You should want
Mhm.
somebody that wants you. For the
Yeah.
first time in my life, Siobhan, I need Terry, because
Wow.
and I never said I needed too much of anything in my life. Um,
Mm.
I want him in my life, but not only do I want him, I need him, because
Wow.
I'm whole with who I am,
Mhm.
and I know your thing is all about wholeness. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I became whole through my mother's death, because then God showed me who I am and who I'm capable of being without having
Mhm.
my mother to lean on,
Mhm.
without having my
Mhm.
father, without having the world. So I was
Yeah.
whole all in myself with me and
Wow.
God. But I need Terry to keep me. I need
Mm.
Terry to be here with me, to hold my arms up, because the
Yeah.
things that God has put in my life for me to do, and the ministry that
Mm.
He's placed in my life, I'm a giver. And for me
Yeah.
to be able to pour out, I need somebody here that's going to pour into me, not anyone that's going to be
Exactly.
envious of my
Yeah.
ministry, not someone
Mhm.
who's going to say, Jay, you're spending too much time praying. You spending too much time talking on the phone, ministering to
Yeah.
somebody. You spending too much time at people's house, giving to them.
Mm.
He sits
Mhm.
here, and when all is said and done, and I told him at the end of the night, baby, I could do all of that as long as I know that if I could lay my head next to you at night and you're here,
Mm.
I need him for that.
Yeah.
And so I went
Wow.
from being somebody that never thought I needed anybody to I'm his needy woman. I need him. And
I
so
know that's right.
now I've become complete. I feel like I'm
Mm.
whole. What I thought was my best life wasn't
Mhm.
my best life. I'm living my best life now, because
Mm.
since
Mhm.
then I've gotten so serious. We
Mhm.
are coming up on what, 3.5 years now since my mother
Mhm.
passed, and I've gotten
Mm.
so serious about the word of God. God is
Mhm.
everything in in my life right now. I'm so sold out for him. I can't compromise anymore.
Mm-hmm.
God has
Yeah.
shown me that there's not time for any more wasted seasons in my life.
Yeah.
So anybody out there who has experienced the loss, um,
Mm-hmm.
through that loss, we have to realize that wasted seasons are over because we
Mm.
don't have enough time. I don't have enough time for empty relationships,
Yeah.
for flings, for no titles. I don't have time for
Mm-hmm.
that anymore. I need to be about my father's business, and
Yeah.
I know that my ladder is going to be greater now. And
Yeah.
with Terry in my life experiencing it with me, one of the things that I didn't share is during all that time, and I talked about how Terry was didn't have money and how he couldn't meet his bills. One thing that
Mm-hmm.
God has allowed me to realize is that he was holding back Terry's blessings because
Mm.
he wanted me to love Terry not for what he had, but for who
Yeah.
he was. And he
Come
wanted
on
me to
now.
see not Terry, but he wanted me to see the God in Terry. He wanted me to see
Mm-hmm.
who he had made Terry to be. He moved Terry
Mm-hmm.
completely out the way and didn't allow me to see any of that because he wanted me to accept him through Terry. He wanted me to
Yeah.
love on the God in Terry, not
Yeah.
on Terry, to accept that. And I
Yeah.
believe that God held back so many of Terry's blessings because of the fact that if he would have opened the windows of heaven and poured Terry out a blessing, I may have fell in love with the blessing
With that.
and not with
Right.
the
Right.
man. And so
Exactly.
Terry never,
Exactly.
like, job after job just kept falling through. And I'm like, oh my God. And at one
Mm-hmm.
point in our relationship while we were dating, Terry was working. He has a master's degree in education from the University of Pittsburgh. He got
Mm-hmm.
undergraduate degrees. He got a principal certification. He got all this, and he was working for Stanley Steamer, and not
Wow.
not as a manager, not as he was
Mm-hmm.
cleaning carpets.
Yeah.
And I seen him one day, and I said, "Did you go to work like that?" And his pants was wrinkled, and I'm like, "No, baby, we don't do that." I said, "You go to work and you act like you gonna meet somebody important that day." And I told him,
Yeah.
because we don't work unto man. I say, well, everything we do it unto the Lord. And I said, so
Yeah.
you start ironing your pants and you start recognizing who you are. We don't go to work wrinkled, you know. So, and it's amazing because after I fell in love with Terry, and he laughs now because he used to say, "Baby, I can't just date you because we're not gonna be living right." He said, "This ain't what I can't date you forever." He said, "Because God wants me to have a wife." And he said, "I believe that I need you to have that title in order for God to honor our relationship." Again, before Terry and I got married, this is something I ain't never did before, y'all. There was no sex involved, nothing. I'm just like, we just
Wow.
chilling. And I told him, I said,
Wow.
"Yeah, you just wanted to marry me." No, but he was like, "No." He said, "I believe that when you marry me, God is going to allow the blessings to open up." And I was like, "Terry, we all right without no titles." But when I tell you that after Terry and I got married,
Mhm.
as a matter of fact, he was just offered a brand new job tonight.
Wow.
The job that he has always prayed for, the job that he's been waiting on, he got it on his terms. They called him right before you and I talked, to seal the deal.
Wow.
Everything that man has ever prayed for,
Mm, mm,
when I
mm.
tell you literally to see it, and my friend Lena, she's watching, she
Mhm.
said that if I didn't experience this with you, I wouldn't believe it, because to
Wow.
see it unfold is
Mhm.
just amazing the way God has
Mm,
did it.
mm,
Once we got married, he got one job after another job after another
mm.
job. I remember Terry coming down, and it's not all about material things, but I
Yeah.
remember him coming down. His tires were bald. He didn't have gas. Now this man stepping out on faith. He getting Mercedes and getting Yukons and bought me a
Mhm.
Cadillac, and God has
Mhm.
just opened up so many doors for him. And we actually laugh about it now, because he'll say, "See, baby, this is what I was talking about.
I know that's
This is
right.
why you needed this title." And so I do seriously believe that God didn't allow Terry to be blessed with everything he
Mm.
had from him. And I told him, I said, "Baby, it wasn't you. There was
Mm-hmm.
nothing that Terry was doing wrong as to
Yeah.
why God wasn't giving him his blessing. It was about me. And
Yeah.
so to tell somebody that's in the experience, that's experiencing loss or not thinking
Mm-hmm.
it's this type, and you're not seeing what you want to see in this man, maybe the reason why God isn't allowing you to see what you want to see is because God needs to work on you first. It's not about
Mm,
that man. It might
mm,
be
mm,
about
mm.
you, that God is trying
Come
to
on.
fix some things in you first and
Mm,
make you love on God a little bit more. And
mm-hmm.
then he'll give you what you thought was his blessing, but really it's your own blessing.
Wow. Come on. Come on. Come on, somebody.
And
Y'all better receive this word here, okay? Receive this word. I'm
yes,
telling you. I am telling you, man, I have been extremely blessed by your story and your sharing tonight. So thank you so
you're
much, Jamie.
welcome.
I
You're welcome.
truly appreciate you, and congratulations to Terry for the new doors that are opening for him, and just for the both of you, for what God is doing in your life and for how he's elevating you and becoming an elder and just really using you for his glory. So just I'm just so grateful for what he's doing in your life, and I just pray
Amen.
that the two of you will continue to be a light, to shine and just show God's love and what he's capable of doing,
Amen.
especially in the midst of all this other stuff that we got going on and what we're bombarded with on a regular basis in relationships. But I'm so grateful for these kind of stories that love wins.
Yes,
God
it
is
does.
able to do any and everything. So I'm so grateful for you sharing, because this is another perspective that I think we need to hear about.
Amen. Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
Yes.
you, Siobhan, for having me.
Yes.
I pray God's favor over your life, every endeavor
Mm-hmm.
that you are embarking upon.
Mm.
We've been covenant sisters through
Yes.
NEFA for a while now.
Yes.
Continue to
Mm-hmm.
grow in grace. Amen. And like
Mm-hmm.
I said,
Thank
I
you.
love this man to death. Like, it ain't perfect. Nobody's perfect. We just wasn't talking
Right.
last night because he was getting on my nerves. But one thing about it, we got up this morning, we both prayed, and about noon he called and he said, "Baby, I can't make it through the day," and we ain't speaking to each other. So
I
just
know
know
that's
that it
right.
might not be perfect, but he's
Mm.
mine and he's definitely my type now. Amen.
Yes, I know that's right. Yes, 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 yes. And that's all that matters, honey.
That's all that matters.
I know that's right. So I appreciate y'all for watching. Thank you for your comments, and continue to leave comments and share this with other people, because we need to get these type of stories out there. So thank you once
Amen.
again, Jamie. Thank y'all. I do this every Wednesday at 8 p.m. I have different guests on, and sometimes it's just me, but just these type of conversations. This is what it's all about. So tune in next week, and I will see y'all later.
Amen.
Thank
See
you.
you, sis. Bye bye.
Okay, bye bye.